Alrighty, so we're going to talk about toxic gender roles. Yeah,
Okay.
because I feel like that there's a lot with this subject in particular. Um, like you have like Andrew Tate and stuff that like really promote negative worldview for men to kind of emulate, and then on the other end you have like women who uh, you ever seen this shit where women do this thing where the man always has to be doing something? Like, the man is out in the garage, and if he's like showing up at all, it kind of reminds me of the same dynamic of like a manager who sees like one of their workers, and they're like, "Oh, well, they're not doing something. Go do something. Go build something for me." Like they're always like they can't rest. You've seen that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think like that in and of itself is like there's so many like I don't know. I feel like there's so many angles to go on because people think like men and women are different, and I don't think that at all. I think that men and women are um, they're conditioned to be different by societal standards than more like a genetic component or like an innate component. Yeah. But and it
Yeah.
it's like it's interesting for like me because like for I can know for like bisexuals or pansexuals like this just seems very easy to understand because like it's like hey we don't necessarily care, we have a criteria of what we like and we go for it. But for somebody who's is straight, it's just kind of strange. It sounds strange coming from somebody like me, where it's like I have preferences as far as like what I like women to be and everything. But that's
You don't want your woman to have certain parts
right. Like and
that
that's the
men
thing.
have.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I and a lot of people are like they're really afraid of like the trap trope, and it's like oh no, what if I'm dating this girl and all of a sudden she pulls out a 10-inch dick and like
I love that one song by that one 80-year-old guy on on American Idol.
oh no, I haven't heard that one.
The song by this like 80-year-old man. He starts off by saying how fine this girl is.
Yeah.
The only problem with her is that she has the manhood.
Yeah.
And at the end of the song, he says the only problem it's bigger than us.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, but and to me, it makes perfect sense because I think about it this way. It's like, everybody has a preference, to some extent. Like, they'll see somebody who, it's like I'm not attracted to guys for the same reason I'm not attracted to girls who look a certain way. That it's like people are like they tend to get so scared. I think it's more like a fear of like homosexuality or like they're like, oh my god, if I look at this one person, I'll turn gay. It's like I feel like anytime I hear shit like that, it's like my dude, my brother in Christ, you might be one. It's like if you're so terrified of maybe thinking like a guy is sexually appealing, chances are you probably are a gay. It's like for me, I don't have that issue. It's like, oh, look at that guy. It's like, no. To me, that doesn't. and I could hang out with gay people and all that, and it's like it's not gonna bother me. But for somebody who's like, ah, they're like either one of those Christians who are like, ah, well, God is gonna hate me for being gay, or they're just like, they have some kind of masculine standard. It's like another aspect of like Andrew Tate and everything. You ever seen some of the people who like? There was a guy who like sniffed his chair as he walked. Like he had like this Yeah, I'm not kidding about that. Go look that up. That is fucking weird. Like he's like, huh, you think I'm gonna do it? You think I should? And then goes over and sniffs his chair. It's like, mmm. And it's like, but I'm not gay. I'm not gay.
Ain't no person sniffing nobody's chairs. That's normal in
Yeah, yeah. Like you can't. I'm sorry. Like
the
I've seen some crazy
weird.
people.
This is weird.
It is. It's fucking weird, and it's like I don't know. And that's the thing. It's like like you have like this heteronormative society in which we live, and it's like, well, we need to preserve that. People have this mindset that people need to preserve heteronormative behavior. Otherwise, their kids are going to turn out gay. And it's like, well, if that were true, then we'd have no gay people ever. Because if they've been in a straight environment their entire life, why would they turn? Why would they be gay if they like had straight things their entire life?
That's why in the past there was such things as secret gays. They would go out with the girl, or if they're female, they'd go out with the guy, possibly marry, have kids, but then they'd have entirely secret lives where they would sleep with their same sex.
Oh, oh, like the Waltons. I don't know if you ever know this, and I don't know if anybody's old enough to know what this reference is to, but the two parents on the show The Waltons, the grandparents, were gay, both of them. Like yeah, and it's like it's this rigid heterosexual like strong family morals show, and turns out both grandparents were really into the opposite.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that like, oh, one thing, and I want to have at some point in my life, I want to have a discussion. And I know this is cliche having two guys talk about this particular subject, but this is one I really want to have with somebody who is a woman, if I can. Um, my theory as to why women are never wrong trope is used. So this is something I've thought a lot about because I've met women who are, oh, women are never wrong. Now, if you're a kid, right, and kids are kind of stupid, right? They don't know enough to be educated and blah blah blah. You don't educate them. You're like, whatever, that kid's right. You infantilize them, right? You say, oh well, whatever, you're right. I'm not going to listen or have any dialogue or any nuance because they're not going to be able to understand or appreciate the intellectual uh, complexity of that argument, right? Right? I'm just going to say Santa Claus did it because I don't necessarily want to tell my kids that it's me giving them presents. So, what if we infantilize women as a means of saying that they're never wrong, and women also instill this kind of sexist trope, but you never argue with women and say, oh well, oh, we're just not going to argue with them because they're not mentally mature. Like the concept that I think is being done in this is that women aren't intelligent enough to understand the complexities of nuance, and that's why we don't correct them when they're wrong. And this is both women do this, and and some men do this. But I feel like that's the reason why women are never wrong concept is because we treat them like they're inferior intellectually. And I feel like not only does this make me upset, do you know what I mean?
Not to say that women there's a saying that you just don't argue with somebody who thinks they're always right,
Yes.
because that just makes you the stupid
Yes.
one. So if you're arguing with a woman
Who thinks
who
she's always
thinks
right?
she's right, you just look stupid.
True. But you're also not really. She's not learning
But
anything.
you can still argue with a man in the same way.
Right. And
And
to be honest, like
if
men are probably along the same
if they're
line.
gonna be stubborn about the situation, just cut off the argument and walk away, because it's just not worth your time or energy to argue with somebody who's going to insist on being stupid and not learning.
But again, yeah, I agree. And that's the thing. It's like we're insisting that women are stupid enough to not believe in what is true. It's like this is one reason why I argue with women. It's like, well, that's not very smart. I'm like, oh well. I like doing it anyway because I like challenging people's comfort. And it's like, okay, what do they normally believe? Okay, well, I'm just going to challenge that. It's like, yeah, they're not going to like me. I don't fucking care. I don't care if people like me.
They're not gonna like you when you walk away from the argument either.
True. I'll say my piece and then leave. How about that? Yeah.
That's probably the smart thing there. As long as you know the truth and you've tried to tell them the truth,
Yeah.
if they still want to believe
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that
There's
they're right when you're gone, they're just arguing with themselves at that point.
Yeah, yeah. There is a point where there's no point in continuing to play the game. Sure, because they're making dumb arguments. Jesus Christ, at some point. But there's I like saying my piece and then like making sure my arguments are correct, and then splitting if need be. But I feel like it's very frustrating. But no, going back to the other thing. But yes, I think that women have been conditioned to believe that their intuition is always right. And that's the thing. It's like men and women have both intuition. Like men have intuition, men have gut feelings. They take risks and
Doesn't
gamble.
necessarily mean that they're right either.
Yeah, that doesn't mean they're right either. Right. Intuition is your subconscious coming to the conscious. Right? That is the concept of intuition. It is your subconscious mind picking up on things and building patterns based on subconscious note or like noticing of things. Um, but that being said, again, I don't think that there's a fundamental difference between men and women in that regard. Like, and I feel like people who have this notion of men, having to be stoic, not talk about their emotions, stuff like this, and, just this sense of toxic masculinity, and what it actually is, which is like toxic traits that masculine leaning people tend to have, instead of men are being toxic for being men, is, those are two separate things. One is correct, one isn't. And yeah, it's so frustrating because like men think of themselves as being logical and reasonable, and yet they go on emotional tirades of this or that, and it's like, I think, I don't understand the concept. It's like men are just as emotional. Like the study that was done that said that men and women's brains are essentially the same,
Right.
and it's like that just it once you kind of, because like you hear a lot of people talk about like comedians or something, and they'll be like, ah, women be like blank, and then men be like blank, and it's like, to me that sounds like horoscope stuff, because it's like you're introducing a character, and then you're adding it, and then people go into the, so what is it, the um, Barnum effect, where it's like you're picking up on traits that you think are true, and you'll like pick up on that and be like, oh well, that explains me, and you'll adapt those personality traits even though they don't apply to you. But in the moment, you feel an, uh, you know, hey, everybody's thinking this, therefore I must be that, right? This happens a lot in churches and blah blah blah, and horoscopes and stuff like that. But the main concept is that it's like there's no fundamental difference between men and women. The only thing that like, you know can apply are whether or not you feel like a man or a woman with like transness and so on and so forth. Um, but yeah, fundamentally there's no difference between men and women. Is, I guess, like, and I hate it when people kind of pit women and men against each other, because it creates a lot of unnecessary conflict where there shouldn't be any. Sorry, that was a lot.
Yeah. It's kind of like that gym room shower skit I seen. If if you go to a gym shower room, usually they're split between men and women.
Yeah.
And then, you just go in there, all the men are naked, showering, whatever, getting dressed or whatever. And the women are most likely doing the same thing, naked and showering, whatever they do in the locker rooms.
Right.
If a man goes into the women's room naked, the woman is going to have the same exact reaction as the man, but it's going to sound different. If the woman goes into the men's locker room naked, it's going to be the exact same conversation that the women are having, but it's going to sound completely different.
Well,
So the man goes into the women's room naked. The women are like, "Oh my God, there's a man in there naked. Cover up.
right.
Oh, you shouldn't be in here. What are you doing in here?"
Okay.
The men's side, the woman comes in naked. "What you doing over here? Why are you over here?"
Right.
It's
I
like it's the exact same. They're the exact same words, but they're used completely
right.
differently. The man's gonna
Well, we also teach women to, you know, as a society, we kind of teach women to clothe up and, hide their stuff,
It's like,
and protect their, you know, what have you, from, the promiscuous man. And men are told to, get it. You know, we have like, as a kid, as kids into adults, women are taught to be more reserved and not be as promiscuous, whereas men are taught to be more promiscuous and not be as reserved. You know, and we coddle women up until the point where we have family members who are more like, you don't have social circles as intricate for men usually as you do for, like, more often than not, women have social circles, so they're being protected. That's a cat. Oh. um but yeah, like, you're going
yeah,
to have, and that's more or less of being raised that way. Now, you can have promiscuous women even though they've been guarded, and you can have more reserved men even though they're told to be promiscuous. Sure. Like, people are individuals, right? And some people are a little bit more extroverted and so on and so forth. So, yes, but on the general scale, you can have, like, I feel like that's more of a product of society than it is like a, a natural inclination, right? It is not, to me, it's not innate. It is more determinant of environment. Like, if you go to, uh, like, African tribes or something like that, where they have more masculine women and more, um, like, reserved men, like, I, I don't know where I've seen this, but I feel like I saw something about this, and I could be wrong. Um, but I saw something where it's like, you had more dominant women, and oh yeah, because there was like a feminist
it's like
interviewing her.
the gender roles
Yeah, yeah, it was the
are
general.
opposite.
Right, it
What?
was more tribalistic, like they were a part of a tribe, but the women were more masculine and the men were more submissive, and I think like that's a good way of looking at the social pressures that we put on male and females in order to make them more of what we deem is normal in today's society. This is the concept behind gender, and you know sex being different from gender. But yeah, there are definitely. It, I feel like this is more of a learned behavior than innate behavior.
Right, but some things just aren't learned. Like, if you're taught to like men because you're a woman, but you then, but you discover on your own that you like women because that's just how you feel.
True. Right. Yeah. There
It
are. Yeah.
doesn't always have to be something that's taught that you're going to go after.
Yes, I agree. Then that's why gays and lesbians come from straight families and straight backgrounds. Yeah, but that is the exception, not the norm. And the thing is like, again, with the, you can have promiscuous women and you can have more reserved men. This is the exception, not the norm. And the norm is the one that we place arbitrarily on people in order to, make a sense of normality within, like, um, the Western world, I guess, is the way to put it. I don't like using that word because it's more of a dog whistle, but I I feel like it's innocuous enough for this particular subject.
Yeah.
Um, but that, yeah, and yeah, you will have exceptions, sure. But I think if, as a society, we go towards the concept of, if we go towards the concept of being more understanding that people are generally the same, we'd have a lot less, like, it's like the reason why the abortion debate is such a heated topic. Oh yeah, yep. I'm turning up the spice level. You're welcome.
Another video, another one gets banned from YouTube.
No, this. I don't think this is on. This isn't one of the banned items. So, just in case context, because I didn't necessarily have it uh, told. My last video was restricted for specific reasons I won't get into because I don't want to have that shithole again. But long story short, I brought up a subject that was against terms and conditions, so I'm not doing that. And I looked. I made sure this time, ladies and gents. Anywho, so abortion. Now, if we had a society where we had more of a under like you didn't have men versus women, right? This is a great way to be misogynistic is to just assume that women are a different species than the one we currently are. And that is like it causes a more of a fine line in the ground. It's like if you give birthing people, I'm going to say it because, fuck you, Anna Kasparian. Uh, um, J.K. Rowling and other transphobes. Um, a birthing person, and you say, hey, a birthing person should have the ability to have an abortion. If you had less of a gender separation and more of a like a fluidity of gender in society, and it's like, hey, just do as you please. Um, I think that we'd have more empathy for women and birthing people in general than you would this wide gap that we have that says, hey, this is a hot topic, but I think that people that have uteruses should lose their rights. And I don't get like why we have this staunch like stance, especially for people who are non-birthing people. It's like just it and it's like, well, and it's funny because it never really is about the birthing process and kicking the kid out of the womb because they don't care about kids. And I don't care how many different ways you go about it. Like, logically, you can't be for kids if as soon as the kid comes out, you're like, screw that. We're going to make it so that that kid and that mother have the most miserable existence for 18 years. We don't have child tax credits. I think they repealed that, or at least it's significantly diminished, or it's trying to be repealed right now by Republican lawmakers. But it's like, it's like we get into a scenario where we're just stripping people of their rights because, hey, we're thinking of the kids. And somebody made a really good quote about this. And, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to quote this. Sorry. Because this is why I save stuff like this on my phone. Politics. Alright. The unborn, this is the quote. The unborn are a convenient group for people to advocate for. They never make demands of you. They are morally uncomplicated, unlike the incarcerated, addicted, chronically poor, and they do not resent your condescension or complain that you are not politically correct, unlike widows who don't ask you to question patriarchy, unlike orphans that don't need money, education, or childcare. Unlike aliens, they don't bring racial, cultural, religious baggage that you dislike. They allow you to feel good about yourself without any work in creating or maintaining relationships. And when they are born, you can forget about them because they cease to be unborn. It's almost as if by being born, they have died to you. You can learn the unborn, you can love the unborn and advocate for them without substantially challenging your own wealth, power, or privilege, without reimagining social structures, apologizing, or making reparations to anyone. They are, in short, the perfect people to love if you claim you love Jesus but actually dislike people who breathe. Prisoners, immigrants, the sick, the poor, widows, orphans, all the groups that are specifically mentioned in the Bible, they all get thrown under the bus for the unborn. I love that quote because that's it in a nutshell.
Let's say it's easier to control people if they don't exist.
Yeah. Is that why they believe? I'm not going to go down the God route again. But on that, but yeah, like that's the thing. It's like, there are, I don't know. I feel like it's just, it's crazy how much we divide ourselves in total by like separating ourselves by sex and gender and all of these different characteristics when it's like a lot of times we're just needing to and then like people who are so when my parents divorced, my dad had the hardest time getting custody because uh, men who are fathers, people who are fathers have a harder time acquiring custody than they do for the female counterparts. It's like if you birth the kid, it's more likely that you're going to have an easier time. Now, a lot has changed since then, granted. Like, this happened, I think, when, in like 97? 90, yeah, 97, I think my parents, uh, my dad fought custody. It was a lot harder for him, sure. But there's that underlying thought that men are better, or women are better caretakers than men are. Now, there has been a lot to reverse that. However, with that being said, you have a lot of men's rights activists who will use this as a wedge issue to take away women's rights, essentially, which is a load of shit. It's like, it's like it sucks that men don't necessarily, that there is a slight bias towards men. Like it's slight compared to what it was, but it's it shouldn't be used as an issue to take away women's rights. Is essentially what I'm getting at. And there's and men's rights advocacy is just a, a masquerade to counteract feminism, even though feminism is more about the equality of gender than it is about like a female superiority. And anybody who doesn't necessarily believe that doesn't know what feminism is, or like the understanding of gender theory in general. And or they can also be like women who hate men for being men. And there is a correlation. This is the fun part, where you have women who hate men so much that they feel like trans women are inferior and that they're not truly women. Those are TERFs. I don't know. You know what that is, right? So TERFs, J.K. Rowling is a TERF, right? She doesn't. She believes that men are encroaching on female territory by being women. So trans people, through this conspiracy to take away women's rights, are becoming women so that they can take away women's rights.
I was looking at something recently where there was some women who believed that trans people were just trying to become women so that they could prey on women easily.
Yes. Yep. Well, no, but that's the thing. It's like you also had that, like, I, a long time ago, you had the same, like, this was the same argument that homophobic people were using to ban sodomy, or to have sodomy laws. Because if you had gay people in men's bathrooms or gay women in women's bathrooms, they were going to sexually assault women, was the lie that they were spreading. And that's the thing. It's like this has never been the case. Like more often than not, it's straight people doing bad things to people. Like
Yeah.
it's like, or you got Matt Walsh who was like, hey, um, our problem isn't that priests are getting away with doing things to kids. It is gay priests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More times than not, a person, if they're going to get sexually assaulted, it's going to be somebody that they know.
Right. It's certainly not going to be fucking drag queens. Like, if you honestly wanted to, hey, what's going to cause kids to get up in the head? It's not going to take them to drag performances. It's going to take them to church. It's going to, survive a mass shooting. And they wonder why, kids are having PTSD moments when, the 4th of July fireworks are going off. It's like,
Couldn't have anything to do with the sound of guns.
but the thing is, again, they don't care about kids. They don't care that these kids are having these issues because they could give a shit less. Only when they take the moral stand and the high ground and say, oh, well, I'm protecting blah, 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 blah from blah, 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 blah. And only saying, I'm only being ambiguous because there are so many things that they're using kids to rip people's rights away. It's insane. And it's like, there are so many things that people can do to make kids' lives better, but they're doing none of this. They're refusing to help kids out in any way, shape, or form unless it promotes an agenda that is harming people or marginalized people. And it's like, Jesus Christ.
Just can't let people be people.
Yeah, no. God fucking forbid. Like, and it's it's like, can we just get already to the, can we finally just go to like the socialist or communist like utopia already? Like honestly, because this is just fascism. This is growing antagonizing for minority or marginalized people in a way that is, distracting people from economic hardships that are caused by millionaires and billionaires who screw over the working class in a means of like getting richer and richer and then influencing politics, which then go into further reallocating of finances to screw over poor people and so on and so forth. Like this is I would say this is the early stages, if not later on, of fascism. Like the only thing we don't have is constant. Wait a minute, we have the ice camps in Mexico. Remember that? Pepperidge Farm remembers. So I guess I mean, we don't necessarily have uh, a certain marginalized group in there yet, but give Ron DeSantis a chance and maybe he'll throw Hollywood in there. uh, it's just insane. uh, yeah. So long story short, there's no difference between men and women. Uh, and bigotry sucks, and you shouldn't do it.
We're not elephant seals.
What?
We're not elephant seals.
I don't know what you mean.
So this is like the best example of toxic masculinity. Is a video of elephant seals, especially the bull male elephant seal, who literally the one that struts on the beach.
Yeah. Yeah, didn't they
And
do like a thing with Futurama with this?
Will kill anyone that gets in their way when they want to take a female.
Yep.
They'll even go to the farthest reaches of killing their own offspring if they think that offspring is impeding them from getting what they want.
Do gorillas do that too? To a certain extent? I know they have like the dominant and then the bitches. But yeah, they did that. They did that on or they talked about that on like Futurama, didn't they?
Yeah, that was a part of Futurama, but yeah. The dominant old male is like that machismo.
Yeah.
Toxic male.
Right. And then everybody better, take their place. But they get all the right. Like, yeah. And it's not necessarily healthy. It's not good. And that's the thing. It's like, well, then that means it's natural. Oh, and then that that study about like alphas and betas with the wolves. Did you do? Because I watched the Adam Ruins Everything on that.
Doesn't work with every animal.
No. Like, watch the Adam Ruins Everything like video on that because like. So what happened? The guy who came up with that theory realized he fucked up, and then spent the rest of his career trying to debunk his own claim. Because what he noticed wasn't necessarily an alpha male; it was just the male in the pack that was the one who was leading, deciding he was being the alpha. But this was based on family dynamics. And go on.
And well, for wolves, more times often than not, the female wolf will take charge because they're the ones that feed the children, they raise the children, and the males are like the guardians. They go out, they get the food, they bring it back, and they protect their family.
Yeah.
But it's not. But there's like no difference. Like if the woman wants to go out and hunt and decides to leave the man with the child, it's the man. The man's just gonna be like, yeah, you go out and hunt then.
Right. Like let's
in that society.
Right.
That's just a different animal's take on.
Right. So here's the thing, right? This is the two genders that should be. All right. Well, let's just go out, on good. So there should just be tops and bottoms. the tops are the ones that are the alphas, and it could be either gender, either sex, or either variation thereof.
Not to go into the animals that can switch
Yeah,
genders
yeah, no.
based on
Well,
whether or
like,
not they're enclosed with nothing but females or males. They
yeah, yeah, like, that's the thing. It's like you either have tops or you have
that's,
bottoms.
that's just chemicals in the water making them frosty.
uh, God, he's funny. Alex Jones is funny until you realize what kind of shit he does, and then you realize he's a monster. But on the surface, he's funny. Only because he doesn't realize how stupid he is. Uh, Airport kill goes in the water, turning for crowds gay.
It's not natural for animals, but I could probably find you a list of several species that do it.
Let's talk about Finding Nemo. There's a great example.
Yes.
By the time the movie starts, his dad is his mom.
If you ever watched National Geographic,
Mhm.
they actually had an episode way before
Nemo.
Nemo that explained that male species of certain fish, like the clownfish,
Yep.
take on feminine roles when certain things happen to the female.
Yep. Yep. So his mom or dad becomes the mom. Yeah. Which is very interesting. And that's the thing. It's like, a lot of people like to compare that and be like, oh, well, it's natural, therefore people are like that too. It's like, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, there's a lot of things in nature that are weird and wacky, and a lot of people in nature that are weird and wacky.
Yeah, but humans haven't developed that ability to actually change their gender physically
Right.
and pass on their DNA in the same way.
Right. I mean, we have gender reassignment surgery.
But that if a man becomes a woman, they can't get pregnant because they don't have.
Yet.
They don't
We
have
do.
that,
We are.
They're working on it, but they have not successfully transferred a womb into a man.
Right. Yet.
They've tested it, and every single test subject, the woman ends up dying and has to be removed because it becomes a toxic organ
Oh.
and could potentially kill the person because it's just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yet. Yeah.
They're still working on it. They haven't figured out how to get it to work. In theory, it should, because the hormones and blood types and stuff all match.
Yeah. I feel like that's just an organ transplant at that point, and it's just a matter of like having the right, like the procedure when it comes to. I don't know, like. Again, this is, I'm at the very bottom of the Dunning-Kruger when it comes to this specific subject, but it's like I don't know enough to really give it. Like if I had to guess, it would be like transplanting a regular organ, but then you have to hook up everything. I don't know. Like there's a lot that I don't know on this, but
we as humans have successfully grafted body parts on the rats that work.
Yep.
Including the male parts.
Huh.
But not the reproductive parts. For some reason,
Give it time.
For some reason, they cannot get the reproductive parts to work. The womb and the balls don't transfer over completely or something, and you end up dying and end up becoming a toxic organ.
Huh. Yeah, we'll see what science does in a couple of years or so. That is, if we're actually allowed to have the United States after a certain point. But yeah, I don't know. Well, they'll come around to it. But even if, like honestly, if people, and that's the thing, it's like there are, like people will ask like Matt Walsh, what is a woman, and then they'll be like, okay, so it's somebody who can give birth. It's like, okay, so an old granny who, you know, no longer has the function of her uterus or ovaries, is she a woman? Or does she become androgynous as soon as those things dry up like raisins? Or, and well, Matt Walsh is also the one who's like, hot and bothered over 16-year-olds. So, I mean, like, it's just ridiculous that even he was like, you know, contemplating on what a woman is, or has an entire program based on what is a woman, or has a fetishized baby doll that you can buy in his merch store of him with a full man beard and like his face on a plushie in a baby in a diaper outfit. I'm not making that up. You can go find it. And he encourages kids to play with it. I'm not making this up. I saw that. I'm like, what kind of goddamn abomination is this? And he's calling trans people, derogatory slurs for being creepy to kids. He is the one doing that shit. I'm, I'm after this, after the podcast, I will show it to you, James, because it's so fucked. Like, why in God's name would you ever do this? And he's the one that made that children's book about a walrus lobbing, a kid wanting to be a walrus, and then the kids in Totomy being thrown out the window and being converted into walrus.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he really, really, truly thinks of the kids. Man, I don't know what's going to come out eventually. It feels like every time something like this with conservatives, they'll be like, I really vitriolly hate blank. Comes to find out later on that they're a weirdo that's doing some crazy practices that correlate with what they hate so much. Like Steven Crowder vitriolly hating gay people. And then you kind of put together the pieces that he really, really likes men's company over women's company, abuses the hell out of his wife, and, he likes dressing up in women's clothing and making gestures towards men that are like a dry hump. And it's like, I'm not saying he's trans. I'm insinuating that I think, methinks thou dost protest too much. If you're hating somebody so much, chances are you kind of want to.
Sounds like a cross-dressing queer to me.
You would think. But it isn't, because he really hates them. Blah, blah, blah.
That's a closeted.
Yeah, it's closeted. 100%. And it's like, Matt Walsh with the baby thing and the talking about 16-year-olds and how they blah, blah, blah. I can't help but, kind of makes you wonder a little bit, especially when he takes the kid's autonomy out of the picture entirely.
You got me with the baby with the man's face, and it is kind of it definitely is gross. It definitely makes me rethink how gross
I'm showing him the picture.
this is. Okay, I think it's kind of gross enough that there are ADL people, adult diaper lovers.
Oh,
They have a fetish for
yeah.
either wearing
Yeah,
adult
and
diapers and being
I'm not
treated
gonna.
like a baby,
I don't want to like
or
kink shame, but I kind of feel like
having
if you
somebody
have
who's
that,
an adult
like you might
with
want to seek
diapers.
therapy. Like I feel like that. I don't know. Like I feel like that's one of those things, like in and scat. I feel like if you like those things, there's probably something messed up in your head a little bit.
A little bit,
A little bit.
a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But I feel like there are some fetishes that are normal, and then there are some that are like maybe you should seek counseling. And I think you know,
I think that qualifies.
I think that that picture definitely qualifies. Jesus Christ, like just I don't know. I think the Republican Party is just full of people who need to go to therapy because they are just messed up. It's like why is it that they have to be so avidly like aggressively attacking people? And it's like, well, my one more point I want to make is that like, how do I know this is or isn't indoctrination? Right? Somebody pointed this out. It was a streamer and I can't remember the name, but they were saying something like indoctrination. Well, you know what? Actually, they didn't say this. I'm going to put my own spin on this. Indoctrination is a funnel going down, right? All of these ideas and everything goes into a very simple binary. This is true, this is not true. This is what indoctrination is. Like it is the concept that we are simplifying everything to where ones and zeros and that's it. Right? The reverse of indoctrination is education where you learn nuances and more details, more specificity and nuance and everything. This is the opposite of indoctrination. Now, how do we know that kids are being, you know, what would be indoctrination? Learning that there's only two genders, learning that there's only two possible ways of being. There are only heterosexuals. These are indoctrinated traits, in my opinion. You know, saying that there's only heteronormative, that there are no gay people, blah, 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 blah. That people are just swayed this way or that way. It's either good or bad. And heteronormative, like, from their world perspective, is good. Everything outside of that bubble is bad. And this is a good example of indoctrination. Not like, and people who are indoctrinated say, oh, well, everybody else is indoctrinated, which isn't true. Like, indoctrination would include a very simplified worldview to where you only have one way of looking at things. But complexity, education, diversity, more choices and nuance and understanding of complexity, these are not indoctrinated qualities because you can find your space within the random everything possibilities. you have a choice in all of these possibilities. That is the furthest thing from indoctrination, because indoctrination is trying to control you through simplified means, whereas education and the antithesis of that is complexity and making it so that everyone can find their own place in the world. So I wanted to make sure and really cover that, because I feel like that is one thing that a lot of people will argue, is that it's like, well, these are indoctrinating whatever it is. It isn't. It is much harder to indoctrinate people who have much more options and have more freedom than it is for people to, uh, it's much easier to indoctrinate people and control them if you give them less avenues for what they can express, how they can express themselves. Yeah. I wanted to make sure and clarify that, because I know that's something that always comes up.
You'd have to have true education, not some of the stuff that kids are taught today.
Yeah. Or you have like Ron DeSantis burning books because genderqueer, or um, you know, stuff that's talking about critical race theory and all that. I'm not going to get into that right now, but having diversity and understanding where people come from and knowing a more nuanced perspective is, yeah, like, it's ridiculous that we live in a society that is trying to prevent people from, understanding everything.
If you have truly educated people, they are harder to control.
Yeah. Yep. And that's
by the indoctrinated.
Right. And indoctrinated people, they always flip it and say, "Well, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make a video about this eventually, but I do want to make like a video talking about how to argue with people who are fascist or fascist leaning, or that support fascist rhetoric." And that's one thing I will talk about, is like projection that they often do, because that is projection, especially if you're indoctrinated. You're going to be like, everybody else is indoctrinated, but it's like, but my guy, look at how much information you know about specific things, and how much it sounds like an NPC with a dialogue tree that only goes in very limited amount of sources. Like, somebody who's truly educated is going to be able to talk outside of that tree. They're going to talk outside of that programming because they look at things from different perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or not have like 15 people all with the same message. But yeah. Well, was there anything you wanted to add? Because we have like an hour plus. Or at least before editing, so that could change. So, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
I don't know.
Yeah. I know we talked a lot about a lot of different things. Oh, it's spicy.
Can't think of anything yet.
That's fine. All right. Well, I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. Like, subscribe, and bloop, 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 bloop. And, yeah, have a good one.